We are just days away from the NFL draft, which means it's time to lock in our picks for our final mock draft of the season. How many quarterbacks go in the top 5? What trades will be made? Are there dark horses to come up in the draft that nobody's talking about right now? We're going to break it all down in my mock draft 4.0. Yo, what's going on, Headliner Nation? Welcome into my final mock draft of the off season. Countless hours watching film, looking at scouting reports, trying to keep up with the latest rumors on all of social media lead us to this point. And there's always so many surprises in the first round of the NFL draft that typically 99% of the mock drafts out there end up being extremely wrong. But it's still fun to put one together, make some predictions, and see how many we can get right. Make sure you like this video and subscribe if you're new here, and leave a comment down below because I'm going to give a draft guide to one person down in the comments if this video can get 500 likes. And our 2024 draft guide is already open with tons of rookie and dynasty content with a lot of redraft content still to come. But for now, let's go ahead and talk about pick number 1. We already know who it is, Caleb Williams to the Chicago Bears. There is just no scenario where I envision the Chicago Bears surprising everybody and going with someone else other than Caleb Williams. They're set up to give him tons of options and lots of weapons over the next few years. This could be the turning point that the Chicago Bears have been hoping for a long time. At number 2, I've got Jayden Daniels going to the Washington Commanders, and right now the Heisman winner has the numbers and the leg up on J.J. McCarthy, who I also feel like could end up potentially going here. McCarthy at one point in time, the odds were actually in his favor to be drafted at number 2. That's gone a little bit quiet, and Daniels is the favorite to go here once again, and I'm going to follow that and believe that Daniels ends up being the pick. At number 3 overall, I've got J.J. McCarthy going to the New England Patriots. And now out of the top 5 teams, the Patriots and the Chargers seem the most likely to trade out of that spot, allowing a team like the Vikings to come up and get their guy. But when you take a look at the New England Patriots, they have a ton of options here at number 3. Do they go with the high upside quarterback, J.J. McCarthy? Do they go with the quarterback that may be a little bit safer in Drake May? Or do they go with the number 1 wide receiver on the board, Marvin Harrison Jr.? At number 4, I'm going to go with the Arizona Cardinals selecting Marvin Harrison Jr. I know a lot of people are talking about the Arizona Cardinals trading out, and I don't think it happens. I really feel like they stay put and draft the number 1 wide receiver on the board. The only scenario where I could see the Arizona Cardinals trading back, if it's only a couple of spots and they move back with a team like the New York Giants. But for now, I'm going to go with Marvin Harrison Jr. to a team that desperately needs weapons. Now at number 5, I do have Minnesota coming up and trading with the Los Angeles Chargers. The Chargers need a lot of depth all over the place. Due to cap restraints, they had to get rid of Keenan Allen, they ended up cutting Mike Williams, and they had to have Bosa and Mack both restructure their contracts to make some room for this season. Trading back and getting a lot of picks is going to be the best way for Jim Harbaugh and company to restock this Chargers team and get them ready for a run over the next few years. But Minnesota ends up trading up and they get their quarterback of the future in Drake May. Now, a lot of people still believe J.J. McCarthy is the top option for the Minnesota Vikings. But keep in mind, new QB coach Josh McCown actually coached Drake May while he was coaching high school. Keep that in mind as a potential fit for them to move forward with May as the quarterback of the future. At number 6, the New York Giants miss out on a quarterback, so they're going to ride with Daniel Jones for another year, but he's got to have some weapons. And they get arguably the most explosive athlete in the draft, Malik Nabers. This guy has the upside of Jamar Chase, and while Marvin Harrison Jr. might have the pedigree and a little bit of a safer floor, Nabers has a ceiling that is unquestioned in this draft class. This would be a really good opportunity for the New York Giants to surround Daniel Jones with the explosive weapons needed for him to live up to that contract. At number 7, Tennessee works on its offensive line with Joe Alt, offensive tackle out of Notre Dame, a generational talent that will solidify the left side of this line. If you really believe Will Levis is your quarterback of the future, then you have to protect him. This offensive line the last couple of years is not what it was in the past, and they have got to fix it if all their investments this year are going to end up turning out to be bargains instead of busts. I feel like I've heard from a lot of Atlanta Falcons fans that they do not want to go with an edge here at number 8. They would rather move back in the draft and gain some more capital, or they'd rather go with an explosive athlete here instead. And quite honestly, there's several edge rushers that could end up being vying for number 1 off the board, but I'm still going with Dallas Turner, an edge rusher that can get after the quarterback and play the run as good as anybody in this draft. Maybe he doesn't have the upside as a couple of other guys, but he may end up being the safest edge rusher among the group. You know, when I put my mocks together, I don't always agree with every single pick. And Romo Dunze to the Chicago Bears at number 9, while being a great long-term pick, I don't know is the win now scenario that a lot of Bears fans may want. Yes, he would be a great replacement for Keenan Allen in a year or two and give Caleb Williams another threat on the outside. But if you're looking at winning now, I could make an argument that going offensive tackle or edge rusher would be a much better fit at this point. At number 10 to the New York Jets, I'm going to go with Brock Bowers, and this appears to be one of the most popular picks among mock drafts for Bowers to land. Now, I could see the New York Jets skipping on Bowers and easily going with a defensive player instead, but we'll see what happens in that aspect. Do you want to get a little bit better on offense for Aaron Rodgers, or do you want to continue to make that really good defense more towards elite status? And for Brock Bowers, I feel like the media and fantasy football fans feel a lot more heavily about where Bowers should go instead of what front offices feel like. If Bowers misses here, I could see him falling a few more spots to possibly Indianapolis. At this spot at number 11, this is where the Chargers moved back to with their trade with the Minnesota Vikings. And I've got Talise Fuaga being the offensive tackle off the board here to the Chargers. Jim Harbaugh wants to establish the offensive line. And I know a lot of you out there feel like they need to draft a wide receiver first, but I don't think that happens. They're going to go offensive line to try and dominate up front. And Fuaga is definitely the type of player that Jim Harbaugh wants to coach. And Fuaga's scouting report is going to show exactly why the Chargers decide to go with him here. He's got excellent body control and balance at the point of contact. He's got active hands and arms. He's quick. He's agile in his change of direction. He's an offensive tackle that moves extremely well and is still violent at the point of contact. Now, there are some issues where he does have to work on his pad level when the ball is snapped, and sometimes he will just kind of push defenders instead of really driving through them and taking them to the ground. But he is the quickest rising tackle in the draft and one of the quickest rising players overall. The NFL teams that look at him love his constant fight at the point of contact, the way he utilizes his arms and his hands to move defenders wherever he wants. I 100% believe that Fuaga is going to be a big pick here for the Chargers and a big pick for what they want to do moving forward. At number 12, the Denver Broncos ready themselves for life after Patrick Surtain, who has been at the forefront of a lot of trade talks this offseason. I doubt he lasts in Denver a whole lot longer. Go with Quinion Mitchell, cornerback out of Toledo, and my number 1 cornerback in this draft. This guy can do it all and is exactly who you want out there in coverage to shut down opposing wide receivers. Yeah, Denver does need a quarterback, but they don't really have the capital to give up to be able to make that move this year. At number 13, another team that needs a quarterback and still can't get it done, the Las Vegas Raiders. Instead, they go with cornerback Terrion Arnold out of Alabama, a guy that Antonio Pierce has met with several times during this process and has absolutely raved about. He's the type of player that wants to develop within this program and organization to become a top flight cornerback and help shut down the cornerbacks of the AFC West. At number 14, the New Orleans Saints need to invest in a decimated offensive line. Guys leaving via free agency, injuries occurring is leaving a lot of openings, and Penn State's Olu Fashanu would be a great fit here. A guy that at one point in time was seen as the number 1 tackle in this draft class has slipped a little bit, and not because he can't do it, but because other guys are just being talked about a little bit more. Fashanu going to the Saints here would be absolutely perfect and would give Derek Carr time in the pocket to hit his open receivers like Chris Olave. At number 15, the Indianapolis Colts, and this AFC South is loaded with young quarterbacks, and these defenses need to be loading up to be able to stop them. Indianapolis goes with cornerback Nate Wiggins out of Clemson, a speedster on the outside that, while some people view as an undersized cornerback, can still get the job done and can play as aggressive as anybody in this class. Stopping T-Law, Stroud, and Will Levis should be a priority for the Indianapolis Colts. At number 16, I could see the Seattle Seahawks going a couple of different directions. Either on the defensive line, especially if Latu is still available here, or the offensive line, which is where I have them going with Troy Fautanu out of Washington. Now, the good thing about Fautanu is he's going to offer a lot of versatility. He can go in at guard right now and then potentially move out to tackle at another point in time. But Fautanu is a mauler, and he's going to give the Seahawks a lot of options on the offensive line. Passing on a talented edge rusher here would be really difficult, and if they went that direction, I would not be shocked. But for me personally, I think we should look at the offensive line first. At number 17, Jacksonville follows the suit of Indianapolis in the AFC South and also goes with a cornerback, Cooper DeJean out of Iowa, a guy that was injured towards the end of last year and finally was healthy enough to participate in his pro day and looked explosive. This was a guy that I was hoping that would fall all the way down to the end of the first for the Lions to draft. That's not happening anymore. Jacksonville's going to get a stud here. At number 18, the Cincinnati Bengals, and people are going to be clamoring for them to take a wide receiver now that Tyler Boyd is gone, and there's a little bit of unrest with T. Higgins, but I'm going to go with defensive tackle Jazir Newton out of Illinois. DJ Reader is off to the Detroit Lions, and the Cincinnati Bengals were one of the worst teams against the rush in the NFL last season. Yeah, you could make it to a Super Bowl with your offensive weapons that you have right now, but if you can't stop the run, there's no way that you're going to win the AFC North. At number 19, the LA Rams get an absolute gift in the form of edge rusher Latu out of UCLA. It would not shock me if this guy is a top 10 pick, and it would not shock me if he's the number one edge rusher taken in the draft either. But there are some concerns over his past medicals, and we've seen things like that shockingly drop players in the draft before. He would never make it any further down the board than this right here, but he absolutely could end up going a lot higher as well. We'll keep an eye on that, and on draft night, we'll find out whether or not teams care about the medicals or they're just ready to let this guy loose. Here towards the back half of the draft, there's going to be a few teams that are going to need a center, and Jackson Powers Johnson out of Oregon is one of the better centers that we've seen in the draft in quite some time. And he sticks in the first round with Pittsburgh at number 20, who absolutely needs somebody at center. Because right now, the Steelers don't have a center on the roster. So they're going to be looking at some of these guys. If Jackson Powers Johnson can fall all the way to them, they'll be set. If not, they could always trade back, which is absolutely an option, and maybe pick up Zach Frazier or Graham Barton as well to play center a little bit later, either in the first round or early in the second. Miami at number 21 should trade back, and this could end up being a prime opportunity for somebody at the back end of the first round or somebody early in the second round to come back into the first to either grab Michael Penix Jr. or one of the remaining top-end wide receivers that are left. Keep an eye on this spot right here. Miami needs a lot of depth, and they would benefit greatly from being able to trade back and pick up a lot of draft capital. But in this instance, they need someone on the interior of the defensive line, and Byron Murphy out of Texas would be an excellent fit for them, considering the fact that they have a lot of injuries and lost some guys to free agency as well. That defense is going to need to be retooled, and Byron Murphy could be a great start for that. At number 22, the Eagles could end up going a lot of different ways as well, but you have a lot of money invested in your quarterback. You've invested a lot in your wide receivers, and you just paid a lot of money for your starting running back. Let's work on that offensive line and go with J.C. Latham out of Alabama. Now, Latham is falling a little bit. Once considered one of the top tackles in this draft, not necessarily looked at that anymore, but he is a guy that could be very versatile, could end up playing guard or going out to tackle. And since Juergens is moving from guard to center to replace the newly retired Jason Kelce, Latham has an opportunity to be a game changer at guard right away. play. And because of that versatility, he could move outside to tackle whenever it would be needed. He has explosive hands and feet, and he finishes fast and hard. Now, he is going to need to do a couple of areas that he's going to have to improve at. He's got to get a lot better at pre-snap adjustments and knowing where he's going to be moving to after the play is called. And then also on the outside, when he plays tackle, that shoulder drop from elite pass rushers can get under and around him pretty quickly. That's another reason why I feel like playing guard would be a much better fit for him to improve his game and grow on the offensive line to start. But he may have one of the safest offensive line floors in this draft with his versatility and his explosiveness. And his ceiling is all going to depend on whether he has the ability to consistently win against edge rushers and keep those sound mechanics. At number 23, the Chargers end up getting their wide receiver after going with a tackle to begin the draft, and they go with Brian Thomas Jr. out of LSU. Now, some of the numbers for Brian Thomas don't look great, and I went into a deep diving statistical video on the most explosive wide receivers just a couple of days ago. If you missed it, check our videos out after this is done and see what I was talking about. But Brian Thomas has some elite capabilities and has some elite traits. He also scored a lot last year, but was that because of Jaden Daniels? Does Brian Thomas become one of the next great LSU wide receivers, or does he end up being a lot closer to Terrace Marshall Jr.? Whatever it may end up being, this is a good fit for the Los Angeles Chargers, who need offensive weapons, and Thomas could be that guy. At number 24, the Dallas Cowboys seriously need to address their offensive line, and getting one of the highest upside tackles in this draft, Amarius Mims out of Georgia, would do exactly that. This kid is a little raw, and he doesn't have the type of experience that some of these other guys do. But man, he is an absolute beast on the line, and if he grows, he could be one of the best tackles in all of football within a couple of years, and that's exactly what Dallas needs. At number 25, the Green Bay Packers also need to address their offensive line, and Graham Barton out of Duke could do exactly that. A guy that could play center or guard for them, two areas that they really need. Now, Barton spent a majority of his time at center, but he moved to tackle out of necessity in his final year. He profiles more as an interior offensive line, so he could pick up as the center right away, or they could put him in at guard and he would be just fine. At 26, Tampa Bay is going to go with edge rusher Jared Verse out of Florida State. This is a guy that unfortunately isn't going as high as I would like him to go, and there's a few reasons as to why that may be the case. But if he were to fall down here to Tampa Bay, it would be an absolute game changer for this defensive line. Verse is a guy that compares similarly to Brian Burns a couple of years ago when he was drafted out of Florida State. A guy that a lot of people saw having a decent ceiling, but were really worried about where the floor would be at. And Brian Burns has turned into one of the best pass rushers in all the NFL. Arizona had two big needs to address in this draft. Game changers on the outside, both on offense and defense. Their first pick, Marvin Harrison Jr., changed that on offense. Their second pick, Kool-Aid McKinstry, changes that on defense. Kool-Aid is a guy not necessarily being talked about as much as he was last year, but he still is going to be a very good cornerback prospect. And even though there are some raw things in his game that he's going to need to work on to get better, he absolutely has an opportunity to do that in Arizona, and within a couple of years, be known as one of the better shutdown corners in all of football. If Buffalo does not draft a wide receiver at 28, I would be absolutely shocked, because right now they have... I mean, what do they really have at wide receiver? They have a lot of guys that still need to prove themselves. And Adonai Mitchell would definitely need to prove himself out of Texas, but he has the opportunity to do just that. Now, his game film and the way he plays looks really good. When you take a look at the numbers, there are some concerns. So are you giving a high upside guy from Texas, or are you getting a guy that unfortunately is going to take way too long to develop, and that will allow that window in Buffalo to continue to close without an elite playmaker? Detroit at number 29 is going to go with Chop Robinson out of Penn State. A defender that is quick, he is fast, and he knows how to get to the quarterback. And with him on the other side of Aiden Hutchinson and a retooled interior of the defensive line, this would become one of the best defensive lines in all of football and would definitely cause issues for quarterbacks. At number 30, I have the Baltimore Ravens trading out of the first round, picking up some some draft capital and allowing the Las Vegas Raiders to jump back into the first to take the quarterback that they missed out at the beginning of the draft with Michael Penix. Now, Michael Penix to me is more of a second round player. I don't necessarily know if I would want to draft him at the first round, but I know for certain that there are going to be teams looking to move back into the first to grab Penix before he gets into the second round. They are going to want that fifth-year option with him. He's going to slide a little bit like we saw with Will Levis last year, but he won't slide nearly enough. When you take a look at Michael Penix, he has some prototypical NFL pocket passing traits to his game. He's got a high IQ, he processes the game well, he does good with pre-read snaps, and he does a great job of finding holes in the defense when they are there. But unfortunately, his age and injury profile are not in his favor. He tends to short arm throws a little too often, and he definitely is inconsistent with his mechanics when he gets outside the pocket. Now, if Penix can stay healthy, he could end up having a solid NFL career. Now, maybe it doesn't end up being a long one, but due to current age and inconsistencies in his game, he may not end up becoming a top tier quarterback, but just good enough to hang on in the league, be a starter for a while, and potentially a backup to go with that. At number 31 for the San Francisco 49ers, I don't love this pick. This feels like it's a little bit of a forced pick and also could be a spot where a team trades back into the first round as well, and the 49ers gain some capital in the later rounds. But when you take a look at what they need the most right now, it's offensive line, and Jordan Morgan would help fill that spot. Maybe he's not a first round talent, maybe he's more of a second round talent, so this is a little bit of a reach, but it would be what they need most. And then to round things out at number 32, even though they signed Marquise Brown, I'm still gonna go with Xavier Worthy here. There's a lot of question marks surrounding Rashee Rice right now and what his status will be for the upcoming season. And Marquise Brown is only on a one-year deal, so why don't you pick up that deep play threat at the end of the first round who can replace Marquise Brown next year and then play alongside Travis Kelce if he continues, and Rashee Rice after that. You're going to need game changers for Patrick Mahomes in the next couple of years, and Worthy could end up being that guy. Let's just hope he's more Deshaun Jackson than he is Henry Ruggs. I mean, we already know the scouting report for Xavier Worthy, right? His asset is speed, fastest 40 at the combine of all time, but he doesn't do that bad of a job when it comes to ball tracking, catch adjustments, and he does have pretty good footwork at the line of scrimmage. Now, his weakness right now is his size. He doesn't have wide receiver one size for the NFL. He would be a guy that if he is covered by cornerback ones that are a little bit more physical, will probably keep him from being a game changer at that point. He needs to improve his hand strength, and because he's always going at 100% speed in and out of his routes, he needs to slow that down a little bit to have a little bit more crisp routes and also give his quarterback a chance. There's two potential outcomes here, and I just mentioned them. He becomes Deshaun Jackson, a deep threat that absolutely changes games at every level, or he's the next Henry Ruggs. He lacks the size and strength needed to be that wide receiver one consistently, but he still could put together big plays for Patrick Mahomes. All right, and to wrap things up, we're going to go ahead and toss all of the picks back onto the screen for you so you have an opportunity to see any if you did end up missing them. I do expect there to be more trades in the first round than what we see here. I expect there to be a lot more excitement in the first round than what we see here. This is a little bit more need-based and a little bit more safety for a lot of these teams, but there's going to be some excitement on night one. I absolutely can feel it. But Headliner Nation, it's time to get out of here. Hit the like button, subscribe if you're new here, and leave a comment down below, because don't forget, if this video gets 500 likes, I'm going to pick somebody to win one of our draft guides for free. Peace out, Headliner Nation. Stay safe, stay healthy. I will see you all Thursday night for round one of the NFL draft. And until then, Headliner Nation, have a good one.